Hey history buffs! Welcome back to Random History. Today I'm diving into the fascinating world of historical practices that have been, shall we say, misunderstood over the years. You know those things you thought you knew? Well, you didn't. Get ready to have your historical assumptions shattered. Let's start with medieval torture devices, specifically the Iron Maiden. Ooh, spooky, right? Images of spiked coffins and screams filling the air. But the truth? The Iron Maiden as a torture device is largely a myth. Most historians agree it was likely an 18th or 19th century invention, a theatrical prop designed to terrify. The actual use of such a contraption in medieval times is highly debated and lacks solid evidence. While torture was part of medieval justice, it was often far more brutal and straightforward. Think public humiliation, branding, or good old-fashioned flogging. The elaborate theatrical torture devices we see in movies, often more fiction than fact. Next up, let's talk about the Vikings and their horned helmets. Iconic, right? The fierce warriors with their fearsome headgear. Well, prepare for disappointment. There's no historical evidence that Vikings wore horned helmets in battle. This image largely stems from 19th century romanticized depictions, particularly in operas like Wagner's Ring Cycle. Real Viking helmets were practical, often simple, and designed for protection. Horns would have been a hindrance in combat, making the wearer vulnerable. The Vikings were skilled warriors, not cartoon characters. Now let's delve into the world of the Middle Ages and sanitation. The common perception is that everyone lived in filth, throwing their chamber pots out the window. While sanitation was different from our modern standards, it wasn't quite as chaotic as we might imagine. Cities had rudimentary sewage systems, and people did try to maintain some level of cleanliness. Bathhouses existed, and while personal hygiene wasn't always top-notch, it wasn't completely absent. The idea of everyone living in a constant state of squalor is a simplification of a complex historical reality. Finally, let's tackle the popular myth that people in the Middle Ages thought the Earth was flat. This is a complete misconception. By the medieval period, educated people knew the Earth was a sphere. Ancient Greek scholars had already calculated its circumference, and this knowledge was preserved and passed down. The idea of a flat Earth was more prevalent in earlier periods, but by the Middle Ages it was largely understood that the Earth was round. The myth of a flat Earth is more a reflection of 19th century anti-religious sentiment than historical fact. So there you have it, a few historical practices that have been misunderstood or misrepresented over time. It's important to remember that history is complex and nuanced. We should always challenge our assumptions and seek out accurate information. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Random History, and leave a comment below with other historical myths you'd like me to debunk. And as always, stay curious. Let's explore another common misconception. The idea that medieval knights were always noble and chivalrous, embodying the highest virtues of honor and bravery. While the concept of chivalry did exist, it was more of an ideal than a reality, often romanticized in literature and stories. Many knights were far from the honorable figures we see in movies and popular culture. They were often involved in power struggles, land disputes, and even outright banditry, driven by personal gain and ambition. The romanticized image of the knight in shining armor is just that, romanticized, a product of later centuries. In reality, knights were complex individuals with their own flaws and ambitions, much like people today. Now let's talk about the myth of the Dark Ages, a term that has long been misunderstood. This term suggests a period of cultural and scientific stagnation, but that's not entirely accurate or fair. While Europe did experience turmoil after the fall of the Roman Empire, it was also a time of significant development and transformation. Monasteries preserved knowledge, and there were advancements in agriculture, architecture, and even early forms of science and technology. The term Dark Ages is a bit of a misnomer, as it overlooks the progress made during this period, which was quite substantial. So there you have it. Another set of historical myths debunked and clarified. History is never black and white, it's full of shades of gray, complexities and nuances. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Random History, and leave a comment below with other historical myths you'd like me to debunk in future videos. And as always, stay curious. Another fascinating topic is the myth of the witch hunts, which has intrigued historians and the general public alike for centuries. While it's true that witch hunts did occur, the scale and intensity are often exaggerated in popular culture and media. The peak of the witch hunts was between the 15th and 18th centuries, and while thousands were accused and executed, it wasn't as widespread as some might think. Many regions were completely unaffected. Many of the accused were women, but men were also targeted, often due to personal vendettas or local disputes. The reasons behind the hunts were complex, involving social, political, and religious factors that varied from one region to another. It's a dark chapter in history, but it's important to understand the context and not oversimplify the events. The truth is often more nuanced. Finally, let's debunk the myth that ancient civilizations were primitive and unsophisticated, a misconception that undermines their achievements. Many ancient societies had advanced knowledge in various fields, from mathematics and astronomy to engineering and medicine, which still influence us today. The Egyptians built the pyramids with remarkable precision, showcasing their sophisticated understanding of geometry and construction. The Greeks made significant contributions to philosophy and science, laying the foundations for Western thought. And the Romans developed impressive infrastructure, including roads and aqueducts that are still marveled at today. These civilizations laid the groundwork for many aspects of modern society, influencing our daily lives in countless ways. So, there you have it, another set of historical myths debunked, shedding light on the complexities of our past. History is never black and white, it's full of shades of gray, and understanding this helps us appreciate the richness of our heritage. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Random History, and leave a comment below with other historical myths you'd like me to debunk. And as always, stay curious.